I think it goes without saying that Square-Enix is having a very interesting, perhaps weird, but yet very profitable year. And I want to get you guys caught up on what's going on online right now. If you guys haven't been seeing the discussion and the frustration and even the outrage when it comes to gamers and Symbiogenesis, it was essentially believed this is going to be the Parasite Eve remake. That is not the case. This is now a NFT collectible game with some kind of story that's connected into it. I want to get you guys the information and details, but I was actually asking my dad, who knows a lot more about investing in companies and understanding the numbers, because he himself was a CFO for many years. And so I asked him to look into Square-Enix, and I wanted to share with you what he actually had to say about it, because then I think that somewhat starts to tie into kind of a greater mystery or narrative around the company that for me has defined most of my childhood, young adult, and even adult livelihood as a content creator and as a gamer. But he says, while I don't know the industry well, they must be the Apple of the gaming industry. Their product development investment is heavy and steady, while at the same time building huge stockpiles of cash. I would assume that was either via the selling and or with Final Fantasy XIV, but we'll go from here. There is nothing indicating that anything significant is about to change unless all that product development investment is about to produce something big. Now, all of their finances are reported in Japanese, and because of the currency markets, their reporting might be somewhat skewed. But for some reason, the market investors are not liking what they're saying, because their price to earnings ratio is way below what a growth company should be. In other words, the stock is taking a beating. So he talks about that. I think that's interesting. At least maybe you find that somewhat interesting, maybe to file in the back of our minds for a future date down the road. But let's jump into it. I actually have two articles, The Gamer and from also Video Games Chronicle. I'll include a link in the description for you guys below, so you guys can go read for these yourselves. It's always important, especially when we reference articles here on the channel, that you guys go give them a click. That helps them and their funding support the content. Anyway, so Symbiogenesis isn't a Parasite Eve remake. It is returning. It's Square-Enix NFTs in this case. Now, last month, Square-Enix filed a trademark for Symbiogenesis, the scientific term that involves two organisms merging into one. This is also a very important concept because Parasite Eve is a survival horror game that was from the late 90s on the PS1 era, and naturally led Parasite Eve fans to have been particularly decades, or been waiting patiently decades for a remake, remaster, or even pixelated mobile port to think that the cult classic was about to make a return. Now, the article here goes on to kind of talk about what Parasite Eve was, how it was inspired, in a way kind of, playing off of the success of Resident Evil. But I think this article itself actually sums up why gamers are going to be the most frustrated with what you're seeing right now in the space given. Now, the art collected by players can be used as characters in the story, and it takes place in an alternate world where the player can untangle a mystery by competing missions. The resolve around the questions of the monopolization and distribution of resources. Now, it can be used as also your social media profile picture, and Square-Enix says that the Symbiogenesis NFTs will begin in spring 2023. Alongside a free browser service, and I'm going to venture to bet this is going to be some kind of marketplace that they're trying to, I guess, connect all these NFT games. Now, what's important to know here is that they still say it is too early to consider making Dragon Quest games and Final Fantasy games into NFT blockchain games. And there is a lot of frustration around just the terms blockchain, NFT, crypto, especially with the current markets the way they are, especially with so many pump and dump schemes. Now, I've talked to a couple of developers in this space, trying to build out blockchain games. And one of the things that they have told me time and time again is that play to earn doesn't work. Play to, like, that is not a real concept within gaming. So when you start to hear that concept, it's more marketing than anything else. It's people just kind of throwing things against the wall, trying to get it to work. But there are ways that they believe that they can actually structure the blockchain to actually benefit gaming, and that's why they're continuing to invest in it. I'll share more with you guys as those games actually become more games. And I think essentially, if you look at Square-Enix, and again, all of this is ethereal because we don't really have None of it works until they finally figure out a way to make it work. And I don't know if gamers ultimately are going to have the patience to put up with it, especially because you do have the crypto bros mindset. You do have the pump and dump schemes that have been happening. But let's put all of that into kind of one silo for just a few minutes and actually talk about, like, if you have a gameplay focused feature first, is there a way that they can implement blockchain technology that will enhance it? Until it happens, we really don't have that ability to know if it will be successful or not. So while I would say I'm skeptical, especially as Square-Enix is stepping into this space, if they get it right, they could essentially define the business model for a generation or two going forward. Not sitting here saying that I'm rooting for it, because all we do have in terms of examples is typically some pretty bad and downright frustrating examples in the long run. But gamers aren't necessarily excited about this. You have the rug pull of not a Parasite Eve. Now, who is really truly to ultimately blame in that case? Speculation and misaligned expectations can always get the better of us. Hype can always get the better of us, and that coming down off that hype and that expectation can be a painful experience. Let's not sit here and say that it's not. We've all been through these hype cycles where maybe things don't end up playing out the right way. But here we are going to be looking at 2023. It looks like the spring, which ties into the letter that we saw from the head of the company, earlier this year, talking about NFTs. It's going to be a wild ride. It's going to be a wild ride. And if they get it right, it's going to be where people are going to look back and say, oh, clearly this is a good thing. But right now, until we have a concrete example of how blockchain could truly, and not theoretically, impact, not this theory that, like, I even covered in a previous video, if I can find the link I will, about this, like, this daydream that somebody has about, like, I'm gonna play this mobile game and it's gonna impact the economy in this other game. Like, that in and of itself, from a development perspective, poses a lot of challenge, especially when you talk about game design, not real world economies and things like that you're managing. So I'm gonna keep following this story for you guys as I like to do. I think this is going to be interesting overall when it comes down to the impact this time next year. These game companies are really trying to find a way. They've found it in terms of digital games in the aftermarket, removing kind of that distribution or that pipeline. And if they're able to kind of, digitize the collectability scale of some of the stuff, then I think essentially that's going to be another vertical, another revenue stream for these companies. But if they focus in on the gameplay first, and then the blockchain ends up being an enhancement, I think then that's when you're going to start to see gamers actually be really, really interested in the technology. But that's going to be where we sit for now. Let me know what you guys are thinking about this and anything that we talked about here today. You got your own theories about how this ends up playing out in the long run. I'm sure it's going to be, it's going to be a journey. That's where I'm going to leave it. Guys, thanks so much for your time. Check out the links in the description of this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time, take care.